The screen is black for a moment, then fades in on a woman in her late 20s, sitting in a simply decorated apartment. She looks directly at the camera, her expression calm, but with a deep story behind her eyes. She takes a breath before speaking. I was on my lunch break when I saw my life's work in a bookstore window. The problem was, my name wasn't on the cover. My sister's was. I just stood there on the sidewalk, with my half-eaten sandwich in my hand, staring at this glossy, professionally designed book jacket. The Last Keeper of the Light. It was my title, my great-grandmother's story. And there, in elegant, gold-embossed script, was the name, Isabel Sterling. Not Clara Sterling. My world didn't just stop. It felt like it had been a lie all along. I bought a copy, walked back to my office, and instead of clocking back in, I emailed a journalist who specialized in literary scandals. I attached a zip file containing over 200 documents, time-stamped drafts, research photos, and a scanned copy of my great-grandmother's actual diary. 3 days later, my sister's career and my entire family imploded. And I was the one holding the detonator. My sister, Izzy, was always the star. She was the kind of person who seemed to float through life on a cloud of charm and effortless success. She had the perfect hair, the perfect friends, the kind of laugh that made everyone in the room turn their head. I was Clara, the quiet one, the bookish one, the one who spent her weekends in the local historical society archives instead of at brunch. We were only 2 years apart, but we might as well have been from different planets. Our parents, especially our mother, treated Izzy's existence like a full-time PR campaign. Oh, Izzy just got the lead in the school play. Izzy's photos from her trip to Spain are just breathtaking. You have to see them. Izzy is thinking of starting her own design blog. Isn't that brilliant? My achievements were footnotes. My promotion to senior archivist at the city's Historical Institute was met with a distracted, "Oh, that's nice, dear. Did you hear Izzy's meeting with that marketing firm went well?" I wasn't jealous of her success. I was exhausted by being invisible next to it. My life was quiet, but it was mine. I loved my small apartment, the smell of old paper and leather at my job, and the silent, sacred world I was building in the evenings. For the past 5 years, that world was a novel. It was based on the life of our maternal great-grandmother, Elara, a lighthouse keeper's daughter on the unforgiving coast of Maine in the early 1900s. I had her diaries, these brittle yellowed pages, filled with spidery cursive. I'd spent hundreds of hours transcribing them, researching the time period, the local folklore, the specific mechanics of the Fresnel lens in her father's lighthouse. It wasn't just a story. It was our history. It was the most important thing I had ever done, and Izzy knew it. She knew every detail. We used to have these long talks, usually late at night, where I would read passages to her. She'd lie on my sofa, eyes closed, and say things like, "Oh, Clara, that's beautiful. You have to finish it. You're a real writer." She was my biggest cheerleader. Or so I thought. Last year, she was going through a creative crisis, as she called it. She'd quit her marketing job to find her passion and was living back home with my parents. My apartment became her favorite escape. She'd come over with a bottle of wine, claiming the house was suffocating her, and we'd talk for hours. She'd ask about the book, about the characters, about the plot twists I was planning. I thought she was just being a supportive sister. I see now she was conducting market research. The biggest red flag, the one I feel so stupid for ignoring, was the laptop. My old MacBook. The screen was cracked, and it was slow, but it held the entire world of my novel. My new laptop was for work, but that old one was my creative space. When Izzy's own laptop died, I, of course, offered her mine to use while she saved up for a new one. "Are you sure, Clara? I don't want to get in the way of your writing," she'd said, with that perfect concerned look on her face. I told her not to worry, that I had backups, and that she could use it as much as she needed. She had it for 3 months. 3 months of unrestricted access to every draft, every note, every piece of research I had ever compiled. The day I walked into that bookstore, The Last Keeper of the Light was prominently displayed in the new fiction section. The cover was a beautiful, haunting painting of a lighthouse at dusk. It was so perfect. It hurt. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. This had to be a mistake. A coincidence. Maybe she'd written a different book with the same title? I walked inside, my hands trembling, and picked it up. The back cover had a glowing professional author photo of Izzy, smiling that effortless smile with a bio that read, "Isabel Sterling, a gifted new voice in historical fiction, found the inspiration for her debut novel in the treasured diaries of her great-grandmother." Her debut novel? I felt the air leave my lungs. I walked to the counter like a zombie and paid for the book. I didn't even go back to work. I went straight home, sat on my floor, and began to read. It was my book. It was all there. My words, my characters, my plot. She'd changed things, of course. Smoothed out some of my clunkier sentences, made the dialogue a bit snappier, changed the main character's name from Elara to Annalise. But the soul of it, the core, the very DNA of the story that had lived inside my head for 5 years, it was all there, printed and bound with her name on it. The worst part, the part that felt like a physical blow, was the author's dedication. For my sister, Clara, who always believed in the power of a good story. The audacity was breathtaking. It wasn't a dedication. It was a gag. A way to inoculate herself against any future accusations. How could I ever claim she stole it when she dedicated it to me? It was a move so manipulative, so perfectly Izzy, that I almost had to admire the sheer ruthlessness of it. I sat there for hours, the book open in my lap, feeling a cold, hollow space open up inside me. The grief was overwhelming, but underneath it, something else was starting to spark. A slow, quiet, methodical anger. The archivist in me was waking up. She hadn't just stolen my story. She had tried to erase me from it, and I had the receipts to prove she was wrong. I didn't call her. I didn't call my parents. I didn't scream or cry or throw things. The shock had frozen over into a kind of glacial calm. My first move was to go to the closet where I kept my old tech. I pulled out the old MacBook, the one she'd borrowed. I had wiped it when I got it back, but I hadn't done a secure erase. I spent the next 2 hours running data recovery software. And then I found it. A ghost in the machine. In the trash bin, there were deleted file fragments of my manuscript, but with different file names. Names like My Novel Draft 1.docx and Izzy Book V2.docx. But the real gold was in the metadata. The original creation dates on my files went back 5 years. The creation dates on her renamed versions were all from the 3-month period she had the laptop. It was a digital breadcrumb trail leading directly back to the scene of the crime. Next, I went to my filing cabinet. I'm an archivist. I document everything. I pulled out a folder labeled Elara Project. Inside were the original printouts of the first 50 pages I had written, dated and notarized 4 years ago when I'd considered entering a writing contest. There were photos I had taken on a research trip to Maine, standing in front of the actual lighthouse from the story, holding a copy of Elara's diary. There were scans of letters from the local historical society, thanking me for my inquiries about 19th century shipping manifests. I had an email chain with a maritime history professor, asking him detailed questions about lighthouse lens maintenance. It was a mountain of evidence, a testament to years of passion and hard work. As I laid it all out on my living room floor, the scale of her theft became grotesquely clear. She hadn't just copied a file. She had stolen my entire intellectual and emotional life for the better part of a decade. My mind started replaying 1,000 tiny moments from our past, and suddenly they all clicked into place, forming a bleak, undeniable mosaic of her behavior. This wasn't the first time. It was just the most brazen. I remembered our high school science fair. I had spent 2 months meticulously growing different types of mold on bread under various conditions, documenting the growth with photographs and detailed notes. The night before the fair, Izzy had a meltdown. Her own project, something about the physics of a trebuchet, had failed. She cried, my parents fretted, and I, the good sister, stayed up until 3 a.m., helping her reformat her presentation. The next day, she won 2nd place. Months later, I found my original notes for the mold project in her desk drawer, with her name written on top. When I confronted her, she just laughed it off. "Oh my God, Clara, relax. I just used your format because it was so neat. It's not a big deal." My mom overheard and chimed in. "Don't be so dramatic, Clara. You should be proud your sister looks up to you." Then there was college. She was struggling with her application essay for a prestigious arts program. I spent a weekend helping her brainstorming ideas, structuring her paragraphs. I told her a deeply personal story about how our great-grandmother's diaries had inspired my love for history and storytelling. It was a powerful, unique angle. She used it, word for word. I only found out when my mom proudly showed me the acceptance letter, which quoted a line from her essay. I felt a sick knot in my stomach. When I brought it up with Izzy, she got defensive. "I was inspired by our conversation. It's our family story, Clara. It belongs to both of us. Why are you trying to gatekeep our own history?" Again, my parents took her side. "Izzy just expresses herself differently, dear. You shouldn't be so possessive, dramatic, overreacting." That was the vocabulary of my childhood. Every time I tried to draw a boundary, I was painted as the difficult one, the one who didn't know how to share. They had conditioned me to doubt my own feelings, to accept her transgressions as a form of sisterly love. She didn't just take my things. She took my voice, my reality, and convinced everyone, including me, that I was crazy for wanting to keep it for myself. Laying out the evidence on my floor, I realized this wasn't just about a book. This was about a lifetime of being treated like a resource, an emotional and intellectual well she could draw from whenever her own ran dry. She wasn't my cheerleader. She was my plagiarist. And our parents weren't just bystanders. They were her co-conspirators. The calm I felt was the calm of a final, irreversible decision being made. They thought I was the quiet one. They had no idea how loud my silence could be. The call came 3 days after I sent the email to the journalist. It was my mother. "Clara, honey, we haven't heard from you. We're having a little celebration dinner for Izzy on Saturday. The book is already getting such amazing buzz. You have to come. We're so proud." Her voice was syrupy sweet, completely oblivious. For a second, I was tempted to just hang up. But no, they didn't deserve an escape. They deserved a front row seat. "I'll be there," I said, my voice even. "Wonderful. Izzy will be so thrilled." Click. I spent the next 2 days preparing. I didn't just have the digital files. I printed everything. The time-stamped document properties, the notarized pages, the emails with the professor. I compiled it all into a clean, professional-looking binder with a simple label on the spine. Provenance. I also booked a consultation with an intellectual property lawyer for the following week. This wasn't just about family drama anymore. This was about my stolen work, my future, and the potential for hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages. When Saturday arrived, I felt strangely serene. I put on a simple black dress, did my makeup, and drove to my parents' house, the binder sitting on the passenger seat like a quiet bomb. I walked in, and the scene was exactly what I expected. My parents' dining room was filled with a handful of their closest friends, champagne glasses in hand. Izzy was glowing, holding court at the center of the room, a copy of her book displayed prominently on the mantelpiece. She saw me and her face lit up in that brilliant fake way of hers. "Clara, you came!" She rushed over and hugged me, a cloud of expensive perfume. "Isn't this all just insane? I can't believe it's real." "No," I said, pulling away gently. "I can't either." My dad came over beaming. "Clara, have you seen this? Our Izzy, a published author. We always knew she had it in her." We sat down for dinner. The conversation was all about Izzy, her upcoming book tour, the talk of a movie deal, the glowing reviews. I ate my food silently, letting them talk, letting the pressure build. My mother, sensing my quietness, turned to me. "Clara, you've been so quiet. Aren't you just bursting with pride for your sister?" I put down my fork. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the chatter, "I'm not." The table went silent. Izzy stared at me, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice a little tight. I reached into my bag and placed the provenance binder on the center of the table with a soft thud. "I mean, it's a beautiful book. The cover is stunning. And the story is very familiar." Izzy's smile faltered. "Clara, what is this?" My father reached for the binder, but I put my hand on it. "That," I said, looking directly at my sister, "is the 5 years of my life you stole. and put your name on." A collective gasp went through the room. My mother immediately jumped to her defense. "Clara Elizabeth, what on earth are you talking about? You apologize to your sister this instant." "No," I said, my voice unwavering. "I've been apologizing my whole life for things I didn't do. I'm done. In that binder, you will find time-stamped drafts of every chapter, my research notes, my correspondence with historical societies, all dating back to 2018. It's the complete history of the novel you're holding, the one with your name on it." Izzy was pale. "This is insane," she stammered, looking around at the guests for support. "She's just jealous. She's always been jealous." "Am I, Izzy?" I asked, opening the binder to the first page, the notarized draft. "Is this jealousy? Or is this proof? Did you really think I wouldn't have proof? Me? The archivist?" The word hung in the air. My dad finally spoke, his voice low and angry. "This is a private family matter. You are making a scene and embarrassing us all." "You're already embarrassed," I replied, my voice dangerously quiet. "You just don't know it yet. I gave you a chance to do the right thing, all of you, for years." I stood up. "Enjoy the celebration." As I walked to the door, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from a news app. The headline read, "Rising star author, Isabel Sterling, accused of plagiarism in explosive exposé. The evidence is damning." I didn't even have to turn around. I could feel the heat of their world catching fire behind me. I didn't go straight home. I drove to the coast, the same stretch of coastline that had inspired the book in the first place. I parked my car, walked out onto a bluff overlooking the ocean, and just breathed. The cold, salty air felt like the first clean breath I'd taken in days. My phone was going insane in my pocket. A cascade of texts and missed calls. Izzy, Mom, Dad. Then the extended family started chiming in. An aunt, a cousin. They were a digital firing squad, and I was the target. The first text from my mother was pure rage. "How could you do this to your sister? To this family? You have ruined everything." I didn't reply. Then came one from my father. "You need to call that journalist and retract this story right now. This is not a negotiation." I laughed. A negotiation? He still thought he was in charge. The most pathetic messages were from Izzy. At first they were threats. "You will regret this for the rest of your life." Then came pleading. "Clara, please, call me. We can fix this. Just tell them you were confused." And finally, the classic Izzy manipulation. "I don't know why you're so determined to destroy me. I was always your biggest fan. I thought we were a team." That last one almost made me angry again, but the anger was diluted by a profound, hollow sadness. She didn't get it. She never would. She didn't see it as theft. She saw it as a collaboration she forgot to tell me about. In her mind, my ideas were a natural resource, like water or air, that she was entitled to. The article from the journalist, a woman named Maria Flores, was a masterpiece of controlled destruction. It laid out the evidence I had provided, side by side. Screenshots of my early drafts next to passages from the published book. My research photos from Maine. My emails with the professor. She had even contacted the Historical Society, who confirmed they had corresponded with a Clara Sterling regarding the lighthouse history years ago. The story wasn't just She said. It was a meticulously documented case of intellectual property theft. The comment section was a bloodbath. The court of public opinion moves fast, and it is ruthless. By the time I drove back to my apartment, Hack Sterling Swindle was trending on Twitter. My publisher, the one who had bought Izzy's book, had issued a statement. We are aware of the serious allegations against Isabel Sterling. We take matters of artistic integrity very seriously and have launched an immediate internal investigation. All promotional activities for The Last Keeper of the Light have been suspended pending the outcome. Suspended. That was the first domino. I knew more would fall. I walked into my quiet apartment, the one that used to feel like a lonely sanctuary, and it felt different. It felt like my own sovereign territory, a place they couldn't touch. I turned my phone off, made a cup of tea, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like an afterthought. I felt like the main character. It was a strange, terrifying, and exhilarating feeling. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was powerful. It was the sound of my own story, finally being told. I've learned that a family crisis has a distinct, predictable rhythm. First comes the explosion. Then comes the frantic damage control. Then, when that fails, comes the character assassination. I was the target of a smear campaign orchestrated by my own mother. She started calling our extended family, feeding them a carefully crafted narrative. I was mentally unstable. I was having a breakdown, fueled by bitterness over my own failed ambitions. She claimed I had a vague, unpublished manuscript, and that I had become obsessed, convinced that Izzy's success was somehow stolen from me. She painted me as a vindictive, lonely spinster, and Izzy as the tragic victim of her sister's psychotic break. Some of them bought it. My Aunt Linda called and left a long, tearful voicemail, begging me to get the help I so clearly needed, and to stop tormenting my poor sister. But the evidence was too public, too damning. The story had been picked up by larger news outlets. Literary bloggers were dissecting the article, and the consensus was clear. This wasn't a case of inspiration. It was a brazen heist. 2 weeks after the article dropped, Izzy's publisher officially canceled her book contract and announced they were pulping the entire print run. The movie deal evaporated. Her agent dropped her. In the span of a fortnight, she went from literary darling to a pariah, a cautionary tale. The fallout for me was quieter, but just as significant. I had a meeting with the IP lawyer I'd consulted. He was practically salivating. "This is one of the cleanest cases I've ever seen, Ms. Sterling," he told me. "We can sue for copyright infringement, seek damages for lost profits, emotional distress. You could own them." But I realized, sitting in his polished office, that I didn't want to. Suing them felt like staying in the fight. It meant depositions, court dates, years of being legally tethered to them. I hadn't burned the bridge just to build a new one out of legal documents. I wanted to be free. So I told him thank you, but no thank you. My goal wasn't to get rich. It was to get the truth out. The truth was out. My work was done. What I wanted was peace, but my family wasn't going to give it to me. About a month after the scandal broke, a package arrived at my door. It was a large, heavy box. No return address. I opened it cautiously. Inside was every gift I had ever given my parents and Izzy. for the last 10 years. The hand-knit scarf for my dad. The first edition Virginia Woolf novel for my mom. The antique silver locket for Izzy. It was all there, thrown into a box like garbage. There was no note. There didn't need to be. The message was clear. You are no longer a part of this family. We are erasing you. I should have been devastated, but instead, I just felt a quiet, profound sense of relief. They weren't just returning gifts. They were returning my time, my energy, my love. They were finally letting me go. The most profound lesson in all of this is that closure doesn't come from an apology. I spent years waiting for one. Waiting for my mom to say, "You're right. We should have paid more attention to you." Waiting for my dad to say, "I'm sorry we let your sister walk all over you." Waiting for Izzy to say, "I'm sorry I took what was yours." I realize now that I was waiting for a train that was never going to arrive. They are not capable of the kind of self-reflection that leads to a genuine apology. Their entire family dynamic was built on the foundation of Izzy's needs and my quiet compliance. My act of self-defense didn't just expose her theft. It shattered the foundation of their whole world. In their story, I will always be the villain, the bomb thrower, the one who ruined everything out of spite. And I have learned to be okay with that. I don't need them to see me as the hero. I just need to see myself clearly. I see a woman who was systematically diminished, whose voice was stolen, and who finally found the courage to take it back. Cutting them off wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of survival. It was like amputating a gangrenous limb. It was brutal, it was painful, and it saved my life. The quiet that followed was deafening at first. No more obligatory Sunday phone calls. No more stressful holiday planning. No more biting my tongue at family dinners. The space they took up in my life, both emotionally and logistically, was immense. And now, it's just empty. But it's not a lonely empty. It's a clean empty. A blank page. A few months ago, I quit my job at the archives. I loved the history, but I realized I was spending all my time preserving other people's stories instead of writing my own. I took a huge leap of faith. I used my savings to rent a small cottage, just for 6 months. It's 2 hours from the city, nestled in the woods, with a small desk that looks out onto a creek. And I started to write again. At first, the words wouldn't come. I felt like a fraud. The ghost of Izzy's betrayal was sitting on my shoulder, whispering that my ideas weren't good enough, that they were just waiting to be stolen again. But then I started something new. Not the lighthouse story. I put that one away. It's mine, but it's also tainted. No, this is a different story. One I haven't told anyone about. One that exists only on my new laptop, under a password that is a random string of 32 characters. It is fiercely, unapologetically, and completely my own. And the words are finally starting to flow, because the truth is, they couldn't steal my talent. They could only steal a product of it. My creativity, my voice, my soul. That was never theirs to take. For anyone watching this who feels unseen, unheard, or has had their light dimmed by someone who was supposed to protect it, your story is yours. Your voice is yours. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is not to fight to be heard by people who are determined to misunderstand you, but to walk away and find a new audience, even if For a while, that audience is just you. The world is full of people who will celebrate your light, not try to stand in it. You just have to be brave enough to go find them. Thank you for listening. Have you ever had to reclaim something that was taken from you? It doesn't have to be a novel. It could be your confidence, your peace, your truth. Share your story in the comments below. Let's remind each other that we're not alone.